Okay. I think I look worse now than I did before. And that's because I've had a runabout day. My nail polish dried up, which made me very mad. So I had to pick a new colour, which I'm not used to. And I've been drinking a lot of coffee, so I'm jittery, so I'm sitting down with a glass of parsley tea, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Second video, and so I'm going to go on to pretty much further elaborate on what I was talking about before. And I'm going to explain exactly what paganism is, and this is mainly for beginners, and it's also a way of learning, you know, just how many different traditions there are. And the book I'm referencing is one I've kept on my shelf for years, and I love it. So I guess the book of the day is going to be this one. It's called An Introduction to Earth-Centered Religions, Paganism. It's by Joyce and River Higginbotham. And if you're just learning the craft, this is a book I seriously recommend. There are a ton of books out there on Wicca for beginners. It seems that's all there really is Wicca books for beginners. But this one actually is really good. And I think I read it probably a year ago. It's found in a paganism or New Age and spirituality section. I buy all my books either from used books or from the dealer's books a million. But I should have been a little better prepared. But mainly what I want to describe are, yes, the different branches of what's considered paganism. There's different names for every tradition, basically, and it's good for any new Wiccan or pagan to be learning what exactly each tradition is, just so you know what tradition you yourself want to follow. There is such a thing in here as blended or eclectic, which is basically taking different pieces of different traditions and putting them into one, so you have basically your own little bunch of traditions that you yourself follow. For me, I think it's better to follow an exact tradition. That way you're a little better able to find information for it that you want. Let's see, the first one listed here is Wicca. It's the single largest tradition within paganism, and nearly half of all pagans are Wiccan. And Wiccanism is something that actually came about in the early 40s or late 30s, the 1900s. It was pretty much made a big thing by, of course, Alex Gardner, who took a lot of old traditions from different religions, mixed them into one batch, and that batch has been called Wicca ever since. Now, underneath Wicca, you have different branches of Wicca. Gardnerian Wicca, which is the original one. It's more of a patriarchal branch of Wicca. It's more male-oriented and male-dominated. You have Alexandrian Wicca, which came about a little bit after Gardnerian's Wicca. I think it came out in the 50s or 60s. Alex, I forget his last name, but his name was Alexander. So Alexandrian Wicca is a branch of Gardner. He was a student of Alex Gardner. Then it says that Alexandrian Wicca tends to use set ritual forms and a more hierarchical degrees of training than other forms of Wicca. And basically, you move up in your craft by degrees, and each degree pretty much dictates what kind of say-so you have in the entire coven. To me, honestly, it's even marked here. It sounds very much like a Catholic church to me. That's what Alexandrian Wicca is, and as a young child, I was raised half Baptist, half Catholic, so I don't know. When I think of Alexandrian Wicca, I immediately think of the old Catholic Church. Its forms and degrees and everything are very much the same. You have Diadanic Wicca. Dianic. I think it's Dianic. You follow Diana, who is a Greek goddess. and pretty much it is very much set in worshipping the goddess. Very into female power and the likes. Fairy Wicca, which I've never actually come across anybody who studied that. Specifically works with nature spirits, and to me, honestly, I think every pagan works with nature spirits, but obviously fairy believers must have their own branch too. Strega is an Italian tradition of Wicca, emphasizes herbal knowledge. So anybody who's very into herbology, or, you know, making, I call them potions, basically. You take your herbs and you mix them together into drinks and stuff. Apothecary, that's another term, I guess. Strega would be for you. Shamanism, it's considered to be some of the oldest pagan traditions, and basically it's just like any other shamanism. It does take, from what little I've seen of shamanism, especially in the pagan sense, it takes a lot from Native Americans. I've seen a lot of French traditions in shamanism, and it takes a lot of study, and honestly, I've never seen a young shaman. I think I've met one in my life and he was about 50 years old. So, Asatru, basically the Nordic, Germanic, and Icelandic deities all are branched together in the Asatru Wicca. You have eclectic, like I said, basically picking out different traditions from everywhere. Family traditions, basically a tradition that's passed down to you through your family, which is what I myself practice. If you really think about it, some of the Wiccan things that I was taught, I was passed down by my mother. Excuse me. I even still practice with a lot of her tools. There's the Celtic traditionalist, who is what I am. The whole goal is to recreate pre-Christian Gaelic religion and society. Basically, the way people would have lived in the British Isles before the Romans ever invaded. That's essentially what Celtic tradition is. It's right there next to Druidism, but it is not Druidism. The Druidism is pretty much all a newfound religion. They call themselves Druid after, of course, the old Druids of the British Isles. But the thing is, the Druids didn't leave any kind of written record. So we know a little about them because it's been described by people who came across them. Monasteries would write it down. But honestly, we have no firm evidence of the Druid tradition. We only have hearsay of it. So Druidism is a Celtic tradition, basically. It was founded in the British Isles. The people of Stonehenge would have been considered Druids, but we have basically no real hard evidence of their practices. It's all guessing. So if you call yourself a Druid, you know, you're basically going to be practicing New Age things that have been picked up, or things that they thought the Druids did. Santeria and Voodoo are African forms of witchcraft. Ceremonial magic is, of course, what it says. It deals with precise rituals, words, and tools, and draws heavily on the writings of Aleister Crowley and the Order of the Golden Dawn. Mystery traditions, those who study the ancient Greek, Roman, or Egyptian mystery traditions. So, I guess a mystery traditionalist would be someone who goes along with the old Egyptian religion when they dealt with their gods, like Ra and Horus and Osiris and Isis and people like that. And then you have the Romans, who had some of their own things, but honestly the Romans picked everything up from the Greeks. So the Greek tradition, which of course would be dealing with the Olympians. Solitary is somebody who picks up their own traditions and practices by themselves. And blended traditions are pretty much a form of paganism that is mixed in with a form of more world-renowned religion. The big one in the blended traditions would be Christo-paganism, and it's like a very early Christian church, honestly. I knew one Christo-pagan, and essentially they practiced just like early Christians would have before the full foundation of the Catholic Church was founded. I mean, they heard prayers out of the Bible and everything. So, Christo-Pagan is the big one of that. There's also Judeo-Pagan, which is Jewish customs and earth-centered practices. Let's see. That's pretty much all it lists about the pagan traditions. Another cute thing that's mentioned in this book is that the majority of pagans are between the ages of 26 and 41, which I don't fall into that age bracket at all yet. I'm only 21. The largest income brackets for pagans puts them solidly in the middle class, and almost half of all pagans have bachelor's degrees or higher. I do have a bachelor's degree. I have an MD, M.E.D. I'm a teacher. Nearly half of all pagans have identified themselves as pagan for less than 5 years. And this is pretty much what I was saying, is a lot of people become pagan, they move through their pagan phase, and then it's like they put it aside and become something else. To me, that's being Wicca. You have a witch phase, but being pagan means you practice this religion for life, as I have. It is something I do plan to carry on to my own children. It's really all I needed out of this book. Another book I would seriously recommend for people who are just learning the craft would be this right here. It's called The Big Little Book of Magic. It's a Wiccan guide. It's one of the only books I really have that says Wicca in it. And it's by DJ Conway. This is again something that you would find in the New Age or spirituality section of the bookstore. And as you can see, I've tagged so many things in this book because it's called a Little Big Book, because that's literally what it is. It's broken down into 4 separate books in one. You have altar, candle, pendulum, and healing magic, and it covers A to Z. It's about the closest description of magic you can get without actually getting an encyclopedia of witchcraft. It has a huge list of herbs, stones, colors, tools, flowers, trees, animals. Just, it's a perfect beginner's guide. And what I love so much about this is I can have this book on hand, and it has these great long lists of things. Like, if I was writing a ritual, I could look up what runes I want to use, what colors, what animals or stones or incense or herbs I want to use, and it's all right here. So instead of having a huge list of all that stuff in my Book of Shadows, which to me honestly would be taking up more room than it should, I can just quote this and write down my ritual, and that can go into my Book of Spells, which is this lovely journal that is quite full, and I think it's about time to get a new one. This book even has a section on shamanism. Pretty much. Yeah, this is a great book to have. And so, as far as learning magic, like I said, rule number 1 should be to learn a tradition and learn exactly what it is, exactly what paganism is, so you know exactly what you're getting into. My next video, I'm going to deal with finding your deity, and I guess I'll tell you a little bit about the aspect of deity that I have and how it's broken down for my coven. And yeah, I guess that's what the next video will be, is finding deity and an exact explanation of what deity is.